Hello, friends and Pythonistas. You have tuned in to the Python Pulse live stream. It is a VS Code and Microsoft live stream every second Friday of the month at 11 a.m. Pacific. And we're going to join today talking about our bread and butter product, VS Code. I already saw some hearts and some love for VS Code in the chat already, which is great. It's Valentine's Day for those who celebrate. I'd love more hearts in the chat and more snakes in the chat. Put some snake emojis in there because we love Python here. One of the great things about this podcast or this live stream is that we dive into VS Code, Python, and other Microsoft tools every month, and we have an interactive session with experts who are creating the tools, who are experts in the tools, or want to help you contribute to the tools. So I am so glad to introduce my friend and the engineering manager of the VS Code Python extension, Karthik Nadig.
Hi, how's it
Hey,
going?
Karthik. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Excited to be on the stream this time. It's been a while.
Great. So we Okay, yeah, I think it might be my am I better now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We have a lot to cover today. I think we're back to normal with our streaming, whatever. And we're going to be talking about Python environments and some other newest tools added for Python development in VS Code, right?
Yeah.
Great. And I think we're going to be getting into the code pretty quickly. But can you tell us a little bit more about what you do for Python and VS Code, some things that you're interested in, and what we're going to be talking about today?
So I'm the manager for Python extension team, and I'm also part of the VS Code team. So I also own the terminal experiences and some of the accessibility stuff and things like that. So all of that is now moved under me. And one of the things that we are focusing on, at least this year, is to make the environments and experiences around environment management better. Right. So Don Germany had this extension out for a while that was built on top of the Python extensions API surface. But our Python extension API surface was not extensive enough to provide a lot of the cool features that the newer environment managers are kind of starting to provide. So we wanted to kind of expand the capabilities of it and also make it our own and modernize it and a bunch of that stuff. So that's what I've been working on and we'll talk about today.
Nice. So to summarize for people who may not be familiar with it, I know it was a new concept for me, but VS Code, because it is so extensible for all of our extensions that are available, the VS Code has an API available for all of our different extensions to interact with native functionality, like IntelliSense, and I'm sure you can, our terminal integration, things like that.
Yeah. So diagnostics, providing diagnostics when you run tools or, like debugger integration and things like that. Like everything is basically an API. All right. And I will show you some interesting things that you can do as we are expanding and building on top of these kinds of APIs and
cool.
things like even with debugging and things like that. Right. Now, and with AI and AI integrations, and so we have been expanding capabilities of VS Code to allow AI based capabilities to move between various things as well, right? So a diagnostics provider provide diagnostics. That diagnostics now reaches the AI. The AI tool can read that and analyze it and provide fixes, things like that, right? So all of these connect because of APIs available in the VS Code's extension API surface.
Okay, that makes sense. And so there are several extensions that are maintained by Microsoft, actually, a lot of extensions.
Mhm.
And so Python extension would be your team, but we also have Data Wrangler and Jupyter extension managed by other teams that are provided by Microsoft, specifically to cater to the Python experience.
Correct. Yes,
Awesome.
there are
Great.
a whole bunch of them. So yeah,
Great.
so stuff that is under MS Python kind of is from us mostly.
Yes. Perfect. Let's dive
So
in.
all right. So you can see my screen here.
I
So
can.
if you install the Python environments extension, you will get this particular icon here.
Uh-huh.
So one of the things with that you'll see is that you have a list of environment managers, and you see that a project view as well. So this is something that we borrowed from Don Germany's extension, like the
Mhm.
view style and things like that.
Yeah.
But I'll talk about like how you could write an extension to contribute into this, like if you want to build your own and things like that. But before we dive into this part, okay, what is the motivation for us to build something like this, right? So what we had support in Python extension was we supported a bunch of different environment managers. Like we supported Conda, we had PyEnv, we had pipenv, durenv, virtualenv, poetry, I think some amount of Mamba support and things like that, like very very basic. And all we did was like figure out what type of environment it is and just adjust the activation commands that we send to the terminal. And that's about as much work as we did in that kind of support. And expanding capabilities always meant that we would kind of clash with something that is a classic experience that doesn't have it, and we would have to compensate for things, and we would always run into one or the other kind of trouble. Mm, a, a thing that we ran into was when we added Pixie support. There was a confusion of whether which environment is actually managed by Pixie and which is not. So in case some
Okay.
cases, people wanted it to be managed by Conda, but some cases they wanted it to be managed by Pixie. But like it was very difficult to figure out like which one people really wanted intuitively, right? And so then there are we started seeing new tools come out, right? UV was announced last year, and then there is Hatch that came out with its own way of managing environments, and then there is PDM. All these new uh, environment management systems are coming out as well. So we were like, should we are currently like a bottleneck here because we have to support all of these things and other tooling, and we
Yeah.
it becomes very difficult to manage all of this, right? So we
Yeah.
wanted to provide a way to extend this capability. So I started working on this extension with an API surface, and we'll talk about that API surface in the end after I
Mhm.
go through a bunch of stuff. I'll talk about that in detail. But I started creating this so that people can contribute whatever environment manager they want. And the other thing is we also turned things around a little bit. Like previously, you had to select an environment and you had to manage and understand a bunch of these things. And we heard from a lot of new users that they don't really know what that means and what dealing with and creating environment means and things like that. So
Mhm.
by having a default environment management experience out of the box, you probably don't have to. We want to get to a place where you don't have to do much other than some admin sets everything up for you, and that's it. You go in and it just lights up, right? That's
Yeah.
the place that we want to get to. All right. So um, here we have, this is an experimental extension, and I have added support for like when conda. Global is anything that is already installed, and because I have to work with many tooling, I have pretty much every version that is major version installed, and I have to test against all of these. Right now, as you can see, we have nothing in this project. This is an empty project. So by default, it picks up the latest Python that is there, right? So we can go ahead and create an environment. So the flow is quite easy with this one. You can change the thing. And one thing you will see is I added is you can search through common packages that are available. So we can add PyTest, right? And then a unique thing is if you in my implementation, if you have UV installed, it's going to use UV to create your environments and install the packages, and it's done, as you can see.
Nice.
Right. So it was nice and fast. And if you have UV, it'll use that. Otherwise, it'll use the traditional classic experience and do that.
Okay.
So, and let's create a Python file. So I'll call it my.
I do have another question. So
No,
this
as
is
you can
going to be. Oh, I have one more question. So this is the default experience when you install the environment extension, but does this come out of the, like if I'm starting from a fresh computer and I install VS Code and I install the Python extension, will the environment extension also be installed, or do I need to install it separately?
This is experimental right now, so you have to install it separately.
Okay,
So
great.
we don't
Okay,
want to
great.
put it
So
in
we're
the.
on the bleeding edge, and we also, I love to invite people who are watching who use this to give feedback on in GitHub, because I know your team constantly checks GitHub for those. Okay, great.
Yes. So yeah, as you can see, the moment this got created, it was selected as the environment for this particular project and stuff like that, right? So it happens automatically. And the cool thing is, if you want to change it, you can trigger the change. So you can force it to go to a different environment manager, or you can go back to yours easily through this view. If you like the classic view, that is also there. So we kind of want to try and keep that thing. But we want to get to a place where most people don't have to think about these things, and then people who do want to can look into it as they need it. All right, let's talk about another thing. So right. So one of the things that we also added in VS Code Core is something called shell integration. You can see that there is a blue dot over here. This blue dot, and there is no dot over here. So that kind of means that nothing's run. And if it's blue, color will change based on theme, but blue usually indicates that it successfully completed the command. And then red often means that, like if I type something random, right, and that command doesn't exist, it's gonna cancel out saying error, right?
And give
And
you that
the
helpful
thing is that
indicator at the
these,
top inside.
yeah, so this system exists so that you can interact with, you can send this information to something else. As you can see, Sparkle showed up, right? So this analyzes the output and tries to figure out what's going on and things like that. And I'll come back to why all of these things are useful. And also you saw that as I was typing something, like you saw some kind of completions show up, and those features are also there, and they light up as and when things are available. So in the terminal, we now have something like the terminal status. Then there is some form of completion, and there is also a feature that helps us read the environment variables, and I will show you that feature as well. And there is also a thing that tells us what type of shell type we are in, so that the command that we send to the terminal is the right command. As you can see, one little thing, this use PowerShell command here, and you see this button here that showed up because this is an activatable environment. This is something that we added recently as well. So if you want to activate, deactivate, you can use this button to do. This button doesn't show up all the time. There is a setting for this. It's let me see, activate button.
Yeah, this is great. I love that button right there. Okay.
So this is there so that you can manually control it, and then you can track. So the button tracks between various terminals. So you are in a different terminal, right? So here I have it deactivated. Here it's activated. So you can see that it tracks.
Oh, great. And so you
So
went to your settings, which people can go to with, I think Control Shift, comma.
Control comma. Yeah. In
Control
mine,
comma,
it's
yeah.
control comma.
And then,
Yeah.
mhm,
So I typed activate button.
nice.
So you can see that here. Right. Anyway, so that's one of the features of this thing, right? And this helps us understand what's going on. And let me show you another thing. So if I activate manually in the terminal, right? As you can see, it detected that it got activated by me typing something in the terminal, right? Previously, we didn't have this capability. Like if you typed something in the terminal and it activated, we had no way to figure out if it was activated. So this is something that was added with shell integration. So this is another setting. Let me share. Integration. So we need this enabled for these things to work. Because this is the feature that allows us to communicate between different shells and understand what's going on, what is the state, and things like that.
I do have a question that came in from our Twitch, ASU_ZZ. I think this can also be, we can also back up and talk about some like how Python environments work as well, and if that transcends to this feature. So we've been asked, does this share versions of libraries between the environments, or does each environment save their own version of the libraries to their environment? And I would imagine, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the way these Python environments typically work is that it really gives you a sandbox of the environments for that particular project, and it wouldn't share versions between different environments, so you can keep pen if you want to, but you can keep those versions clean and not integrate with other projects. Is that correct? Tell me more about if that works. Okay, great.
Yeah, you are correct. So it's basically like your it's basically like a container. Like that environment has everything that particular environment needs. Python out of the Venv doesn't really have a lock file system. Brett has worked on that a little bit, but many environment managers have a lock file system that they provide on their own. Like Poetry has its own Poetry lock, and UV has its UV lock, and Conda has its own variant of this. So they all store this information in one or the other way along with the environment, and that environment is basically like one block. Like, and you cannot have multiple variants of the of a package in the same environment typically. Right. Like Node has a very tree-like package system. Python has a very flat package system, so it doesn't really allow you to have like, oh, PyTest 7 and PyTest 8 together in the same thing. Right. So
Great. Thank you.
Does that answer the question?
I think so. I think it did very well.
All right. So then I showed how environments get created, and you saw like you can look at these packages, and you can if you want to quickly uninstall something, you can click on a button and it'll uninstall, and you can look at stuff here. We also looked at switching environments, and we also looked at selecting things. Package installation and removal is available here. You can also copy the path to the Python like that with this button here. You can launch a terminal directly from here that is particularly activated for that particular one. So there are a bunch of things, and if you don't want this don't want this environment, you can delete it and it's all gone.
Oh, cool,
Sorry,
cool,
there
cool,
is
cool.
one bug, a visual bug that I'm working on that sometimes causes this, but uh, yeah. Anyway, experimental. But as you can see,
Experimental.
yeah, it's so as you can see, the environment is gone, right? Um,
For an experimental extension, this is a very slick features. And when I'm talking with new developers or experienced developers, the idea of kind of navigating and fiddling with your environment settings is not trivial at all. So
yeah,
I really appreciate this extension.
Yeah, so one of the things that we are trying to do is like get away from that aspect, right? Well, a big problem that we had with Python extension was like you would be brought into this view, and this is an intimidating view. If you had Conda and if you had Conda create, as you can see here, like what are these things, right? Like so many different Condas that we have, and what do they mean? All that makes it really hard for people to see and understand and pick and choose or anything. But by making it so that environment managers can figure this out for the user, it means that like a Conda extension, you could build a Conda extension that precisely finds out which environment user wants to use and just does it for them out of the box, right? Or
Yeah.
you can tailor that experience how you want, and that is our goal with this thing. And the experience can be tailored to the environment management products philosophy, however they want to do it, right? And we didn't want to be the ones who dictate that shape, but we did want to do some control there, like make it easier for people to access that information, have something reliable available to them all the time, things like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we have some people that joined late, and it was a great question anyway, just to remind us. What are the environment tools that are supported? We did discuss UV, UV's at the top, but we said
In this,
Hatch and Pixie,
so
and
in
which
this
other
particular thing,
ones?
in the
Yes, or
environment.
all of what we're working on. Mhm.
Oh, yeah. So in the environment extension, we will out of the box support Venv, but we want users to contribute the extensions for the other various types. So we have
Oh,
actually opened up,
yep.
and that's why. So we have an API surface for this, so that you can tailor that experience however you want.
Okay,
And
great,
so I'll talk about that API surface and how you can build on top of it. Um, so
great.
let's get back into this. So let me recreate an environment,
Mhm.
right? And this time I'm going to use Fast API. So as you can see, I can type in things as well. I
Okay, cool,
escaped out of
cool.
it, but I can type in things as well. So let me go back in there, install. So I typed in Fast API, and I was
Yeah,
like, okay, I want to type a few other things. So I don't want to search here. You can do edit, and then you can say,
yeah,
so
cool.
put it in there, and then that goes and installs those, and you should be able to see UV Fast API.
Great.
All right, so I'm gonna bring this up, and can you create a hello world Fast API?
Oh, great. We're bringing in, for those who are not familiar and did not hear the great news about Copilot in VS Code, we used to have an only paid experience. Now we've added a free tier, and you can click that little Copilot icon, and you'll pop up with a chat bar on, I
Yeah,
guess you could put it on the left or the right. That was also a new feature.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
now
that is
we're
also
asking it to do stuff.
yeah. So I'm asking it to create a simple application. There
Oh,
you go.
nice.
And then accept the changes.
Oh, that's
Right.
so nice. Oh, boilerplate code I don't have to remember.
Right. And then
Great.
yeah, so let's see if we can get it to run with this in the terminal. Right. And then I'm just going to run this Python file.
Cool.
Taking a while to start.
And those who may not, and I want to
Sorry?
note that for those who may not be familiar, there is a run button at the top of your file. And that also, and can you clarify that also integrates through your debugger, so it's running specifically through your debugger,
So
or
there is
not
a
necessarily?
run with debugger. So there is a separate one for
Yeah.
debugging, but
Okay.
this is what I used. I just ran it in the terminal. And I'll show
Perfect.
you the thing. So you click on it, you get the hello world, right? Cool.
Yay.
Now let's kill this, and then let's start with something a little bit interesting. So let's I want to say val, and not sure why this import is s, and then start get and I'm using completions here, and then I'm gonna say default value is
What do we call that? Ghost text?
so yeah, some of it is ghost text, some of it was our next edit suggestions. So I can say val here, and that should be good enough. All right, I'm gonna put a breakpoint here, and you know what I'm gonna do? Instead of launching the debugger and stuff like that, I'm just going to say debug py, and then my script. It's gonna take a second to start the server. Hoping it's starting. All right, it started the server, and there you go. We're debugging it, right? So one of the things that we added in this extension is this ability to see the values that you get in while debugging. So you can see the live value of the live value of the variable as you are writing, as you're debugging your code in the line. And there is a lot of heuristics that goes into figuring this out. I think you got cut off a little bit, but what I did was I typed debug py, and then I hit this thing to start it, and I had a breakpoint here, so it stopped at this line.
Cool.
Yeah, and we do a little bit of heuristics to figure out what value we want to show here. And as you can see, it's picking hello world, the default value, and I will show you that. Let's terminate this again, and this time we will this is PowerShell, so it's and my var equals like our
Happy coding.
right, and then so this we introduced this specifically because it was specifically because a lot of people find it difficult to write configurations for debuggers, and many people are okay with running their things from terminal directly, and as you can see now, it's happy coding. Right? It's
Nice.
read from the read from the environment variable, and you can see that stuff. So the thing is, it's easier to set up your environment variables in a terminal, and then you can have multiple terminals with different things set up, and then you can run your debugger just from the terminal, without having to worry about like what is launching from where and how are they connecting, all that kind of stuff. So we wanted to make that easy, and it's as easy as typing debug by and running your script, right? Or you
Right.
can run your module or anything. So yeah. So
Shout
that's
out to Eleanor, one of the team
yeah.
members in the chat, excited about no config debug. And yeah, Harrison, this is a more recent feature add to support the way that Pythonistas like to code.
Yeah. So making it easier to do things just using the terminal capabilities, right? So this is another thing that I wanted to show. And this feature also comes from the debugger. So the debugger kind of tells VS Code what values are, and then the language server takes those and tries to analyze and figure out which value to show. So we do this. This is also available in notebooks. You should go and try. We added that capability in notebooks. So in that scenario, you get live data with all the time. So you can see as you go along how the data changes.
And I have another fundamental question, because some people really use VS Code and it's bare bones and not much else. So to get access to the Python debugger, there is an additional extension, but because it's no longer experimental, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's included when you install the Python extension, correct, for the debugger experience?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
So it is included with the Python extension.
Awesome.
Yeah. Right. So this is another thing I wanted to show about, like what we added and how all of these things. So so the way it works is we have shell integration that tells us what is running in the terminal or not. That helps us figure out when someone typed the debugger, like debug py something, and this particular command actually just launches the debugger in the background. And on
Okay.
the VS Code side, we can start a debug session and then we connect the two together, right?
Okay.
And that's how all of this works. And for us to make this happen, we had to get the shell integration parts done, and then like a bunch of other things done, and now we can like basically hook them together.
And I don't know if we'll have time. We're making really good time, but maybe we can bring up, if at the end, the GitHub repos for some of these extensions and features, and maybe you can poke around and tell us how to navigate for people who are interested in getting their hands dirty on some of these some of this code or contributing features.
Yeah, we
Awesome.
can talk about that if we have time. Yeah, so debugging from terminal. I showed this this thing. We can now talk about we can talk about some cool things that we are trying to add, and we are actually looking for feedback on some of these things.
Cool.
So another feature that we are working on is, let's just say, subdirectory. So now you have a subdirectory and you add another script under here, but you want to run this thing with a different environment, right? Like let's just say that you have something, some kind of a need like that. So you can add that as a project. So now it's a separate project, right? And then we can change the environment for that project. We can say, well, let's create another one. Let's this is for subdirectory, and then yeah, we'll use 312. We'll create venv2, and I don't want any packages.
Yeah. Just in case we do run out of time, Eleanor makes a great point. Can we put in the chat the 2 repository links that we could be talking about today? And we'll just say really quickly what they lead to. So let's start with the the first, or we'll just put both of them in the chat. And then what are those 2 repository links, Karthik?
So one of them is the environment variable. So let me. Sorry.
I think Heidi, would you be able to put those into the chat for us?
So this one.
Great.
I have posted it in our.
And yeah, and the other one is the Python debugger.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry to interrupt, but that was a good point in case we ran out of time. Let's keep going.
Yeah. So these are the 2. Yeah, we'll talk about that more in detail. But what I wanted to show was basically you now have 2 directories. Each directory has its own environment, as you can see, right? And I can walk through that quickly. Let me remove the project, and let me show you how I did it. So I went in here, right? I just right-clicked on this, and I said, because I wanted a different environment for this directory, I said right-clicked on this, and I said add project, and then I came in here, and that had its own project, and I wanted a different environment for it. So I actually directly created it under that project, but you can always switch it.
Okay. And does that create a new .env file in your project? Oh, yeah. Yep, it does. Okay, great. Yep. Nice.
Yeah. So what this means is when you run this file, right, it will use its own subdirectory when, as you can see, it activated that virtual env, and it's running using that particular.
Super handy.
Right. This is to support monorepo scenarios. So again, it's experimental. We are still working on making it better. But we added this for monorepo like scenarios where people have huge repositories. They don't want to create multi-roots, but they want to just have different environments for different cases and things. So one way you can think about it, like you can have a test environment and and your debugging environment, and you can have all of these set up to work with different directories in a different way and run those things uniquely, right? So this kind of is our attempt to get that kind of power available to the users, right? So taking this in that direction. So this was another thing. We went a little crazy with this one. So I'll say we can take it to another direction. So let me say yet another script.
Okay.
And I can basically like, why do we want, directories? Let's just go with Python files themselves. Right? You can have a dedicated environment to a particular file. And you might say, why is this needed? We actually added this to support something like this thing. I'm going to share on the screen just a second.
Yeah.
Once it opens up. So there is something called PEP 723. It was a PEP that was added for inline metadata support. So if you haven't looked at it, I'm not sure why, but the page for this is not loading at all for me. All right, finally loaded. So this is from Brett, who is working on this as well. So
I think Brett worked on Brett Cannon is a prolific Python contributor for a long time and works at Microsoft.
Yeah. So I think he worked on PEP 722, but 723 got accepted as the final PEP. So what this PEP basically says is describes your script requirements as a comment like this at the top of the script. And then what is expected out of such scripts is that they are single file scripts. They don't import any other files. They just import packages that you refer to directly in this dependency list. And they are supposed to be like one file contains everything. Its dependency, which Python version it supports, everything. And which means that it uniquely has its own environment, right? So it could be a different environment than what everything else in your workspace is using. So those systems also, we needed a way that is flexible enough to handle that kind of a thing. So we built it in a way where you can basically have a single file have its own environment versus, directories and project roots having their own environments and things like that. So that's the justification for the single file support that we have here. And yeah, so those are the various features that we have in the experimental version of this extension. And now I want to talk about a little bit about the we can talk about the repo. And do we want to go repo first and then go into the details of API, or how do we want to do?
Let's do repo first and then API. Yeah.
All right. So repo. I highly recommend finding feature requests here. People.
Okay. Let's present you back on screen.
Couple...
I think we might have lost it.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
Not sure how. Can you see my screen again? Okay.
Yeah, back. There you go.
Sorry about that. All right. So we have a lot of feature requests. Please do add here. It helps us understand what people are looking for and what we want to do and build. So as I said, like there is PEP 723 support that we are looking into. And then there is also the .env file support as well that we are looking into. A lot of people, it seems like, use .env file to manage their environment variables, how they're running and things like that. So we do have some support for it in Python extension, but I feel like it's very difficult to understand when it is consumed and when it is not consumed. And it's always a struggle to figure out the right things. So again, we want to improve that experience as well. So this is where we are doing that work and capturing all of those things. In terms of what we want, right? One of the things, like if you want to contribute your own extension for environment manager, we are actually looking for people to contribute things for these. Someone is helping out with Pixie, but we would really like community to come forward here. And the reason is that this will help as there are new features come out in the environment managers. If you have a separate extension, you can build it into it faster than we can put out something, and it'll help increase the capabilities of it.
Yeah. I'm interested in what are the like requirements of creating an extension and managing it. So I'm assuming it's essentially a downstream fork of this extension, and then additional capabilities specific to the environment it's being managed, or would it be some other type of? And then is there like how do you manage the? Are you watching a build that happens frequently? How do we stay in sync with your updates?
So yeah, so the only thing that you have to borrow from here is the API directory. So there is an API directory with a bunch of APIs defined. You pull that directory in. So you follow the same guidelines as you are building any extension for VS Code. So there is if you look at the VS Code's extension development guidelines, there is a bunch of steps to how you can create a bare bones scaffolded extension.
Okay.
and then you can start from there.
Mhm.
The exact steps on how to do things is available uh, in
Cool.
in the thing. We describe a lot of the steps on how you can do everything with this API, how to contribute to this particular extension if there is something that you believe is a common to everything, things like that. So there is going to be a step-by-step guide that I will also add into this at some point. But the simplest aspect is all you need is you have to set that you are dependent on this extension,
Hmm.
and you use the API surface for this extension.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah,
so it
and
sounds much easier than what I was describing.
correct. And there is
Yeah,
a sample here that you can just basically like copy. And if you feel like you want to copy something and work quickly, you can just copy this sample directory and start working on it.
cool.
Right? And it should have everything in it. And as I said, the only important thing you need is this particular file that you have to
Yep.
borrow from this extension. Everything else is purely stuff that you would add. And in this example extension, uh, I basically create a dummy environment manager, and it's as simple as you see here. This
Mhm.
one file basically contributes an environment manager. It's just that it's not doing anything internally.
Mhm.
You could launch your environment manager to do whatever it wants here. Like on create, you create, and you respond back saying created, and
Mhm.
that's it. And we right, it's tries to be as simple as possible, and it also gives you various events that you can raise when you discovered new environments, or you can say, oh, I decided to change the current environment for this particular file to this something else. You can report those things as well. So it's pretty the implementation details. You can look at the current virtual env implementation and the sample conda implementation I have as well. So if
Mhm.
someone wants to like really look into a real implementation, you can dig into here. So in sources, there are managers, and there is conda. You can look at the conda env manager for implementation detail for everything, right? Like
Okay.
as I said, it's create. All it's doing is running create with a bunch of, you know, like running the tool underneath. That's all,
Yeah.
and then doing some error handling and responding back, right? So
Awesome.
it's straightforward and simple to do a bunch of things. Like for example, remove again just deletes runs the conda tool to delete conda, and just handles errors and details as it comes along. So you can see the conda here, and in the built-in one, if you want, you can see the venv manager for how virtual environments are managed
Mhm.
and handled. And then this is system Python manager. This is basically any Python that is globally installed on your machine.
Okay.
This looks at that stuff. So you get a feel for that. And
And
then
for
package.
built-in, you said
Sorry?
that's gonna be for built-in, you said that's, Viv and PyEnv, the Windows
No, no,
one?
no. This is
Or
this
just
is just
Vim?
system. Yeah, this is just Venv.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Um, so then there is package management. Again,
Mhm.
it is very similar. It has install and uninstall and bunch of other things like refresh packages, uh, and there is events as well, like that say whether a package was created or not and things like that. So you expose these
Mm.
things to us. Not created, package was installed, or if there were any changes to an environments package, you let us know. And all of this basically tells us and updates our UI, and we can provide this information to other extensions that are looking for it. Like let's just say that someone else created a different extension that is particularly looking for some package to be installed. They can listen on this particular event and basically know that, oh, this package is installed, now I can start up. Think Jupyter, right?
Yeah.
Like the Jupyter notebook can basically, oh, create an extension, add Jupyter in it, and it can listen to this, and once it knows that Jupyter is installed, it can then start its server. rather than trying to attempt to start it, fail, and then attempt to start again, fail, and like reduces all of that kind of stuff. So you
Fair.
have
Okay,
examples.
cool.
Yeah, you have examples here that you can look at, and then you can basically take this examples directory and then just start working with it if you want to start right here.
Awesome.
So that's the environments manager extension. And then the other one that we have is the uh, debugger extension. And this is where all so we created this extension. I'll say why we created this separately. So a lot of people, one of the things that they were asking us is, they often run into legacy scenarios where they have old variant versions of their software. They still want to debug it, use it, work with it, but they can't do anything because they can't pin. So if they want have newer version of VS Code installed, but they want a really old version of the debugger, they
Okay.
are not able to make it work.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
this is why we made it so that people can pin the extension to some version that they want,
Hmm.
and that way they can work with like really ancient like versions of the packages. And we intend to, every time there is a new Python release and older one gets deprecated, we intend to update this table with the version of what you can use to get access to those kinds of things. And that's why we had to split that from the main extension so that you could pin just the debugger to a particular one.
Interesting. Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, right. And the other thing that this also enabled us to do is add like very debugger specific features. Again, you can file your issues here for feature requests that you want. And Eleanor is looking into the debugger issues right now and adding features. She's the one who added the no config debugging. And yeah, so we will look into this and help you here on this one.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Great.
that is it from me.
That's exciting. Great. That's plenty. And we're like getting close to the end of the hour. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the API as well. We did that in our conversations about the extension, correct? Or is there
Correct.
more that we can chat about?
So there is a larger set of APIs. So I only talked about environment manager and package manager API. There is
Yeah.
also a project creation. So I'll share what I mean by that. So when you come
Great.
here, you see this plus button, right? So let's go back
Hmm.
to our thing that we were looking at. So you know this is just for, I added this for demo, but you can see that UV has a project initialization feature. You can use the project creation contributor to basically contribute an entire project creation flow. So if
Oh,
someone's,
like that would be like a hatch, for example, if you wanted
yeah,
to create a hatch. Okay, interesting.
right, like you could fully control that experience from here. So like, for example, if I go into UV, I can say, okay, my project, and then where do I want it? I like, put it in this. Is it a library on an application, right? Application. Do you want a package support? Like, you know,
Oh.
whatever. And I did this just as a demo,
Uh-huh.
but like you can, right? Like, so it created all of that stuff for us. So right, it added a pyproject.toml. I did a bunch of stuff, updated the things. So if you, so it added the source thing, it created this experience is not something that we can kind of build for, build a single one that can work for every environment manager or every
Yep.
package creation system, right? So that's why we have this contribution model now, so that people can build whatever tool they want that creates this very specific project systems that they like, right?
Yep.
So yeah, that was the intent of this stuff.
That's exciting. And so we don't have to show it on screen, but for those who might be familiar with the very famous VS Code Pets created by Anthony Shaw, that's probably one of the most famous Python or VS Code extensions that I know about. And it has cute little pets going across the bottom of the screen. The ability for people to come in and add fun and levity or performance enhancements for their specific project workflow or for their favorite tooling allows you to customize all of VS Code to what really makes you efficient. And I'm just so excited. I had on my to-do list, like I have like a private repo somewhere of me trying to make my own extension, and that's fallen off. I'm dusting that back off because this is very cool. Ways to customize and build and then contribute to my favorite editor. That sounds fun. So I love that this whole episode has ended up being this call to action for people to contribute to open source, which is my favorite.
Yeah. So that's it. You are a Django expert, so you could have like your own Django, whatever specific styles that you like adding here, right?
You are onto something. I love that. So I
Yeah.
should do a Django one, and I also would love to do some more things with Conda. So maybe I'll play in that space. I hope to see people who join this live stream. I hope to see your handles in the contribution notes. We have excellent PMs who will do monthly release blog posts on the Python dev blog. I wonder if we can show the Python dev blog links on screen. If you want to read more about these two features, there is the February where we talked about the no config debug. And then there's the November one from 24 that introduces the environment manager. So make sure you keep track of the Python dev blog. That's also where we'll shout you out if you give us some contributions. And we get really good traffic there. So thanks so much for joining this live stream. And I'll thank you in advance for your contributions to VS Code.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining us, Karthik. Do you have any last things to add on how people can keep in touch with you or keep in touch with the things coming out with VS Code?
Yeah, I am actually up always on GitHub. I always just keep checking, like refresh, and check all the time. So yeah, that's the best way to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for watching. This has been the Python Pulse. See you next time.
See you next time.